Welcome to Devine Intervention, shedding light on Illinois property tax.
Hello, and welcome to Devine Intervention, shedding light on Illinois property tax. I'm Nora Devine, a property tax attorney who has spent the last 2 decades representing owners across Illinois, from single parcel investors to statewide portfolios. Today's guest is Patrick Hynes, Lyons Township Assessor and candidate for Cook County Assessor. He's a certified Illinois assessing officer, a member of the International Association of Assessing Officers, and a longtime advocate for professionalism and fairness in the assessment administration. In this episode, we're taking a candid look at how Cook County's property tax system can rebuild public trust through accuracy, transparency, and accountability. Pat, welcome to the show.
Hi, Nora. Thanks for having me.
So getting right into it, you've spent your career inside the assessment world. You've been at the county level in Cook County, which has 1.8 million PINs. I am not sure if there's any counties in the country that have more property index numbers than that. And you've also worked at the township level at the Lyons Township Assessor's Office. From these vantage points, where has the public trust in Cook County's assessment system broken down the most?
Well, I would say that for the average taxpayer, Cook County property taxes are expensive and confusing. So the average person could not articulate how the assessment system works, how they come up with the values that are used to determine their share of the property tax burden. And in the past few years, Cook County has introduced a lot of volatility into our assessments. So taxpayers have been subjected to wild swings in assessed value and the resultant property tax burden when they know that they have not experienced wild swings in the value of their property. And so this disconnect between the market realities and the assessor's performance has eroded public trust, and people just don't trust the numbers on their tax bill anymore. So we need to find a way to do a better job of articulating what we're doing and to produce an assessment that's credible, that the taxpayers can have some faith in.
And so as an aside, what are the differences between the countywide assessment office and the local township assessment office in Cook County? I know most of our viewers are either property tax advocates or assessing officials. And when I teach, I have to explain that there are assessors in Cook County that don't assess. Can you tell me what your office does on a day-to-day basis and how closely you work with taxpayers?
So right now I'm the Lyons Township Assessor, and we are the best assessment spot in the entire system. We get to act as a taxpayer advocate for the 45,000 taxpayers in Lyons Township. So I joke that after I left the employ of the county assessor's office, that I get to use my skills for good now instead of evil. And so it's a lot of fun, because when a taxpayer comes to your counter with their tale of woe, you get to use all of your years and decades of experience to discover where the assessment went wrong, assemble the data necessary to convince the county agencies that there was an error made, and at the end of the day, provide a favorable result for your taxpayers. And
you're helping people screen for any homeowners exemptions for which they may qualify, and you're helping them build, evidence that they could submit in support of a tax appeal.
Absolutely. We're doing all of that. And then in addition, we're also looking at the macro problem inside the township. So, micro managing it, looking at each individual taxpayer's particular tale of woe and filing an appeal for them is one thing, but then also taking a look at the data used to produce the entire assessment in Lyons Township. We were able to save folks who've never even been to our counter money on their property tax burden just by cleaning up the data and correcting the assessment that was erroneous outside of the borders of their own property. So
yeah, I've always wondered about the data, and I know that you used to work in the field department. Can you talk about what the field department does and what are the challenges with the upfront data collection in Cook County?
As you said before, Cook County is an enormous jurisdiction. And if you think about all the times somebody's swinging a hammer, putting a shovel in the ground, building things from the top of the county to the bottom, it's the primary duty of the assessor to discover, list, and value all the properties that are in the jurisdiction. So you have to constantly be on top of that state of change to capture all the new properties every year that are added to our built environment. And so if you're not on top of it, if you don't add those properties to the property tax rolls, then you're missing out on those property tax payments. And in Illinois and in Cook County, property taxes are a zero-sum game. We set the amount that we're going to collect for local taxing bodies first, And then the assessor's duty is to divvy up that burden in a fair and equitable manner so that every property taxpayer is paying their fair share of the burden. So if you leave off a new luxury single family home, you just tax it as vacant land and don't add it to the tax rolls. If you don't assess the new restaurant, the gas station, the car washes, and warehouses that are currently missing from the tax rolls, then the other taxpayers remaining are left to pick up the burden that should be borne by those new properties.
So the data quality has been a persistent issue. Does this come down to the staffing in the field office? I know there used to be more than 100 employees in this field office, and that's when it dwindled down to 12. What kind of changes would you make there?
Right. So, there's no magic beans. Assessing a jurisdiction as large as Cook County is hard work. And when I began my career in the 90s, there were 50 plus field inspectors on just the residential side, collecting data to make sure that we had good quality data to produce a credible assessment. At its nadir, just recently, there were only 8 residential field inspectors actively out working to maintain the data. And on the residential side, there's about 1.5 million parcels. 8 people cannot maintain change in data for 1.5 million residential parcels. And so then as a result, we're not keeping up. So the change that we would make was we would go back to employing more field inspectors. We would leverage some of the technology that's available to us today, because when my career began in the 90s, the aerial photos, the technology, the online information that we have just wasn't available. So, you can really make sure that you're making the most out of the human resources that you have out in the built environment. But, there's no shortcut. We really need to be out physically in the built environment, doing 360s of properties, taking a looky-loo at what's in the built environment so that we can assess it properly.
Okay. That sounds reasonable. What do you think that office would look like if it was fully staffed in that department?
Well, you would see people out in the field on a regular basis. You would probably hear from folks that said, hey, somebody visited my house from the county assessor's office, rang the doorbell and did a 360 of the house.
And do you think there's a role for the local township assessors? I've always felt like they were underutilized. Like, is there any role for them in this?
There sure is. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And, like I said earlier, I love being the township assessor. It's the greatest job in the whole system because, you're the taxpayer advocate. And I know that they're frustrated as well in every township when they have their taxpayer come to the counter with their tale of woe and they have a property description error, that's causing their property tax burden to be more than it should be. It's taking on average 2 or 3 years for that taxpayer to find relief, to get a field inspection and a corrected property description.
There have been times that I've banged my head against the wall for 2-3 years in a row and eventually just referred the client to the local township assessor because I said, I am sure that they are going to be able to push this through like better than I can. They literally act like I didn't file anything, that I did, there's just nothing ever happened. It's amazing.
Right. And that, and that erodes trust in our system. It destroys taxpayer confidence that the system is functioning properly, that it really is giving a fair and equitable distribution of the property tax burden. So, I think that the township assessors have an enormous role to play, that their role could be leveraged quite a bit more than it is right now. There are 100 or so very qualified and talented individuals who care deeply about their taxpayers, who are working in each of the township offices. And I think that a better partnership with those township offices would be welcome and would bear fruit.
Okay. And right now we have a triennial system. So the city of Chicago itself is assessed. And then the following year, the north and northwest suburbs are assessed. And then the following year, the south and southwest suburbs are assessed. Do you think this is still functional, or do you think we should be moving toward annual assessments?
Oh, triennial reassessments are kind of kicking our butt. I don't know. You're being very, very aggressive to try and do it every year. No, I think the triennial works. The city, then the north, then the south. It's a rhythm that we're all kind of used to. I know that when I was in the cycle during the 20 years that I was at the county assessor's office, the city of Chicago was a monster. It's half the parcels, half the value. You really kind of built up your endurance to get ready for a Chicago tri. And then the North tri was a little bit more palatable. It's about 30% of the parcels, 30% of the value. And then when we were facing down a South tri, everybody was in seventh heaven. you're on the downslope. That was an easy one. It was 20% of the parcels, 20% of the value. And so I think staying in that rhythm, dividing the resources, the IAAO did an audit of the assessor's office. We should have about 600 employees in order to do that job. And right now we're sitting at about 275, give or take a couple. So, really, you're already asking quite a bit out of the resources that we have, and to do the entire county every year at one time, I think that's unreasonable. It's not a recipe for success. So,
but we are seeing some push toward annual assessments under the current administration. I, in my own practice, have seen sales chasing in a non-reassessment year with values increasing for both residential and commercial properties because a sale was reported. And so in the second and the third year of the triennial, I have seen that they have spot assessed and increased the value. So, I get it that you want to be accurate and you want to capture escalating value, but in the current system, which is a 3-year reassessment system, I don't know how you feel about that kind of increase.
Well, as you know, sale chasing is contrary to state law. So, number one, you can't do that. You can't change one because they happen to have a transaction and favor the ones who did not transact. So you're entitled to two things. You're entitled to an assessment that matches the market value, but you're also entitled to an assessment that's fair and uniform with similarly situated property. And so if you're going to sale chase properties out of TRI, you're ruining uniformity. You're favoring the properties that did not happen to transact in the prior 3 years to the detriment of those that happen to have a transaction. And so that's an inappropriate way to administer our office. And I don't think that there's any reason then to come outside of our triennial reassessment because of poor practice in a prior administration.
Makes sense. So Cook County has unique layers. We've got the county, we've got the township assessors, we got the board of review, and there's not always been a whole lot of coordination or, dare I say, a high amount of goodwill. How do you think that collaboration could be better to make the system more consistent for the taxpayers?
Well, number one, it's important to get the assessment right first. So even our worst year, when we had the highest volume of appeals, only 20% of the parcels in the jurisdiction filed an appeal, which conversely means that in our worst year, 80% of the taxpayers are never going to file an appeal. And so if you're trying to get the assessment right on appeal, you've already lost. 80% of the taxpayers you send that assessment notice to are just going to eat whatever property tax burden you're going to give them. So that's number one. You need to have an assessment system that's functional, that produces a credible result. The taxpayers have confidence in that assessment. Now, in a jurisdiction as large as Cook County and that many parcels, with the data that you have, you're never going to be flawless. And so we do need a robust board of review and God help us, a PTAB system to catch those errors. And so it's important that we're not acting like kindergartners, that we're not standing outside of each other's doors saying, well, if you don't like the assessment, don't blame me, blame the other guy. If you don't like my result, don't blame me, blame the other guy. It's important to have some professionalism, some standards, and walk with a little bit of humility that when I hand off my assessment book to the board of review, I've run my race as hard as I can. I have worked as hard as I can diligently to turn in the cleanest, best book that I possibly can produce. But if there's some evidence given to the board of review and the board of review finds fit to make a correction to that book, well, whether the county gets the assessment right on first pass, second pass, or third pass is not relevant, as long as we produce the most accurate assessment book possible before those tax bills print. And that goes a long way to giving our taxpayers some confidence that we are distributing the burden fairly and equitably.
Yeah, I mean, they are there, the board of review, but they shouldn't be the kind of first line of defense for an accurate assessment. They should be catching mistakes, and that's the way that the system was set up. They're not set up to hear every single parcel every single year. And the number has crept up. At times it's been as high as a third, from what I understand. And most of the finger pointing I've observed between the Cook County assessor and the board of review has been about technology and switching over from the old system to the new system. Do you have anything to share about that?
Well, that would go back to the 2021 season when the county assessor switched over to the Tyler system. There were some data snafus in the ability for the county assessor to send their data to the Board of Review to send their data back to the county assessor. There was quite a bit of finger pointing about who was to blame for that. I don't know that we need to rehash the past, but I think that it goes a long way towards having grown-ups in the room that are willing to work with each other. And so, if I know that my partner agency is having trouble receiving the data, or I know that my partner agency is having trouble sending the data back, it serves the taxpayers if you act like a grown-up and work with your partner to find a solution, as opposed to standing out in public and pointing and saying, hey, not my problem. Please go blame the other person.
So if you were going to explain to the average Cook County homeowner what rebuilding trust really means, what do you tell them?
I would tell them that help is on the way, and we're going to make the county assessor's office boring again, the way that it was always meant to be. We're just going to go back to the generally accepted appraisal principles and the assessment best practices that I've learned over the 30 years that I've been at this. We're going to publish our data, our measures, our resultant assessments will match the market, so that our taxpayers can have confidence that when the bill is printed and they receive their assessment, that they're paying their fair share, no more, no less.
And then what kind of update can you give us about your campaign? What are the highlights thus far?
So far the campaign is going well. We've earned the endorsement of the Cook County Democratic Party, which was hard fought. It's very rare for the Democratic Party to reject an incumbent. But in this case, when we pled our case and the incumbent pled his, I think it was obvious to a majority of those that it was time for a change. We're doing very well with labor and other interest groups and with our fundraising. And then we're also taking our message to the voting public. And for the most part, we have an overwhelming amount of support. People are very fed up with the wild swings in assessment. The number one argument that we get, or the number one complaint that we get from the average voter, is that we just want some predictability in these assessments and the resultant tax bills.
And for my commercial clients, they're just redlining Cook County altogether. They won't do a project anywhere and everywhere in the United States of America, but not in Cook County, because they have no predictability whatsoever on what their tax liability is going to be. All right. Well, thanks for being here. And that's it for today's episode of Devine Intervention, shedding light on Illinois property tax. A huge thank you to Pat Hynes for joining me and sharing his perspective on professionalism and fairness in assessment administration. To learn more about Pat's work and his vision for Cook County, visit assessorhynes.com. And if you like my team to take a closer look at your property's assessment or your appeal options, you can visit thedivinelawgroup.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review whenever you listen. Pat, thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thanks for having me, Nora.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.